Hello, everybody. This is Find Your Flourish. I'm Avrohom Jacks. I'm your CEO or Chief Encouragement Officer. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment on this video so we can help the algorithm spread our message far and wide. Thank you so much. Let me start today's podcast by sharing a fascinating story with you. This story is of a mystic, a Jewish mystic, and his very capable wife. The mystic spent his days in prayer and meditation and study, while his wife ably ran a textile business. She ordered material, and she sold the material to the local duke. Now, the material was primarily black material. Black material was cheaper in those days. And she sold also white trim, but the white trim was more expensive than the black material. And obviously, she sold a higher volume of black material than white material. So one day, she tells her husband, she's not able to make it to the fair where she buys her merchandise. And so she asks her husband, the mystic, if he could go. And she gives him clear instructions. The instructions are that he should buy 90% black material and 10% white material, because the black material is cheaper than the white material. And the Duke orders 90% black material versus white material. So the husband goes, he dutifully travels to the fair, and he figures he has a lot of time. So he finds a quiet corner, and he begins to meditate, and before long, he's deeply lost in thought, as mystics are wont to do. And he doesn't realize that time passes by. And when he finally realizes that the time has passed by, he runs into the marketplace. All the stalls are either closed already or almost sold out of all of their material. There's only one place, and all they have is white material. So he ends up coming home with 90% white material and only 10% black. So he comes home, and his wife is understandably upset. She had given him clear instructions, and he's so absent-minded that he had totally not fulfilled those instructions. So he tells his wife something really interesting. He says to her, listen, I believe 100% that everything that happens is for my greater good. Everything that God does in this world orchestrates this world for my optimal good. So therefore, for whatever reason, it is in our optimal good that we have 90% white over 10% black. Now, at the very same time that he was having this conversation with his wife, obviously unbeknownst to them, the Duke was celebrating. He was having a big party, and many nobles had come from far and near to celebrate and to participate in this shindig. And as was the custom of dukes in those days, the Duke imbibed more alcohol than he should have, and in his drunken stupor, he noticed that all of his soldiers, all of his guards, as part of his security service, they were all wearing primarily black uniforms. So he asks, why is everybody so glum and gloomy? Why is everybody wearing black? So they explain to him, Your Highness, the black material is much cheaper than the white material, so therefore we've decked your security detail out in black material. So he got really offended. And again, he was drunk. So he said, are you implying that I don't have enough wealth to clothe my soldiers in all white uniforms? Well, I'll show you. I issue a decree, go and find white material. I want all the uniforms changed to be only white. So, of course, they run around, and not too many people in the district have white material, but there's one mystic and his wife that happen to have a very large quantity of white material, and of course, they provide that quantity. So they provide the material, and they make quite a decent profit on the whole thing. So you see that what happened was that the mystic had absolute conviction that what he was that things were happening for his optimal good, and because he had that conviction, it brought about that reality. There's a Talmudic passage which is really a fascinating passage. The Talmud in the Tractate of Horius on page 12b, the Talmud says the following: that there used to be a behavior, a habit that travelers used to do before they embarked on a journey. Now remember, in Talmudic times, the Talmud was written about 1800 years ago. And so in Talmudic times, it was very dangerous to travel. It's not like today when we jump on an airplane, you can be on any place in the world within 24 hours. In those days, to travel from one major city to another could be a perilous journey of many months on foot, with exposed to the elements and exposed to robbers along the way, to thieves. It was a dangerous, and wild animals. It was a dangerous proposition. So what people did as a superstitious practice, people went into a dark room before embarking on a journey, and if they would see their shadow, then they would take it as a good omen, because it says in Psalms that God is our shadow. So if they would see a shadow, they would say that the journey would be uneventful, it would be an easy journey, and they would return safely. However, if they didn't see their shadow, they took that as a bad omen, that they wouldn't come back safely. So the Talmud asks the question, fascinatingly, is there any truth to this superstitious practice? In other words, if a person really doesn't see their shadow before embarking on a dangerous, perilous journey, does that really mean that they are going to be, that they are putting themselves in danger? Is there something to it? Is the sign a reflection of reality? And the Talmud says, of course, it's absolute nonsense. There is no power here. There is no validity to this practice. It is pure superstition, and it has no. So whether you see your shadow, whether you don't see your shadow, has much more to do with the lighting in the room than any omen about the journey. Then the Talmud says something that is absolutely fascinating and startling. The Talmud says, although this whole thing is nonsense, still you shouldn't do it. Why? Because if a person does this practice, this superstitious practice, and they do not see their shadow, and they take that as a negative omen, the fact that they are thinking negatively in and of itself, nothing else, just that negative thought, could bring about that negative reality. So in other words, the Talmud is saying that the quality of our thoughts, the type of thoughts that we have, invites the reality that we experience in our lives. This is a very, very powerful idea, and one that in future podcasts, I want to delve much, much deeper into it. But this is what was at play when the mystic said that I am sure that this is for my good. He saw the shadow, so to speak. He had that positive mindset. And because he had the positive mindset, he was able to draw down that reality for himself. I now want to share something with you, which is something I heard from a very, very special person about a year ago. And it left a very profound impression on me. So I'll tell you, I wasn't there. I heard a recording of a keynote speech that a father gave a year ago. So what was this father? This father was a father to a very, very special 7-year-old child. A child that the the parents, the teachers of the child, and anybody who knew the child said that every child is special. There's no question. Every child is pure and innocent and angelic, especially when they're sleeping. But this child was an exceptional child. He was very, very kind. He had such a beautiful personality. He was respectful towards his elders, towards his teachers, just something very special. Anyway, this boy, when he turned around his 5th birthday, he felt dizzy and he was falling down. So of course they took him to doctors, and they found a tumor growing in his brain. And for 2 years, this brave angel fought valiantly against the disease that was increasingly robbing him of his health. But unfortunately, just after his 7th birthday, he succumbed and he passed away. So this father who lost his beautiful child was speaking to a group of people just over 30 days after his 7-year-old son passed away. And he said the following. He said that he had been studying a concept in Jewish mysticism that is spoken about frequently and at great length by the founder of the Lubavitch movement, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi. And Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi speaks about 2 concepts. One is called, they're Kabbalistic concepts. One is called Memale Kol Almin, and the other is called Sovev Kol Almin. So Sovev Kol Almin, these are the Aramaic terms for these 2 concepts. They're both concepts about how God relates or doesn't relate to the world. Memale Kol Almin is how God relates in an internal way to the world. Memale Kol Almin is God's connection to the world that the world can manage and can handle. So Memale Kol Almin means that the world is, God takes his energy, the creative energy that brings the world into existence, and God tailors that energy to fit like a garment, a tailored suit that is cut to fit the dimensions of the person's body. So there's an energy that comes into the world, that sustains the world, that brings the world into existence. And that energy that brings the world into existence needs to come into the world at a pace that the world can absorb and can manage. Because if the energy is too powerful, it will overwhelm the world out of existence. So therefore, God curtails and measures that energy. So the energy comes into the world. It's just the right amount of energy, of divinity that comes into the world to keep the world in existence. Sovev Kol Almin is a different type of energy. It is so powerful that it cannot go into the world. It cannot integrate. It cannot be absorbed by the world. If Sovev Kol Almin would be revealed, the world's fragile existence would be obliterated because it would be too overwhelming. Kind of like if you would imagine a great mathematician, Einstein, for example, coming into a 1st grade class and teaching mathematics to a first grade class. The class would be overwhelmed by what Einstein is trying to teach them at his level. And the kids would just say, I don't know why they say this guy's a genius. He doesn't seem like a genius to me. He seems just like I don't know, somebody who speaks gobbledygook. Nothing he says makes sense. One word doesn't make sense, doesn't match with the next word. The whole thing doesn't make sense. Well, of course it doesn't. They are overwhelmed because the concept is way beyond the ability that their brain has to absorb that content. So that's Sovev Kol Almin. It's divine energy in a much more raw, much more raw and godly and divine and unfiltered way. So because it's unfiltered, it comes into the world. If it would come into the world, if it wouldn't be held back from the world, it would overwhelm the world and destroy the world. So all the energy that comes into the world is only the amount of energy that we need and that we're able to sustain. So back to the father. And the father, who's just devastatingly lost his child 30 days ago, is standing up in front of this audience and he's speaking to them. And just from the heart, he's telling them how much comfort and joy he used to get from learning and from his studies. He's a teacher as well. And he said that every Thursday night, he would sit down for several hours with a group of people and they would study the teachings of Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the founder of the Lubavitch movement. And they would particularly be fascinated by this contrast between Memale Kol Almin and Sovev Kol Almin, where Memale Kol Almin means that energy that comes into the world that the world can sustain, and Sovev Kol Almin is the transcendent energy that's too powerful for the world to absorb. And he had a question, although it was beautiful intellectual pursuit. His question was, why did Rabbi Shneur Zalman, why did he teach the concept of Sovev Kol Almin, this transcendent energy? We have no connection with it. It has no relevance to us. It's an energy that is so powerful, it transcends anything. It's like Einstein teaching mathematics to a first grader. It just doesn't go in, it goes over our head and increases in speed. So why would Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi, why would he teach this concept? Memale Kol Almin, I understand. It's how God interacts in an intimate, relatable way to every single aspect of creation. When we say we have a relationship with God as much as a person can have a relationship with God, it's with this Memale Kol Almin. It's with this curtailed, tailored energy that's limited and finite. Because we're limited and finite beings, so it's the best we could do. Why does the Alter Rebbe the Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi keep going back to the Sovev Kol Almin? And he had this question in his head. When he was sitting devastated, mourning and grieving his child, and well-meaning people came in and tried to comfort him. And they try to comfort him by telling him that this angelic child that he had been given is obviously some very special soul, too great for this world, and therefore God took the soul back embraced him in his loving arms, and all sorts of other ideas, which are philosophical ideas that no bad really happens, it's really all happening for our optimal good, etc., etc. All of these things that people try to explain to him just didn't help. On the contrary, they were irritating. Who wants to hear that? Who wants to hear when a person who suffered such loss, such difficulty, who wants to hear all of these logical explanations? So the world of logic is the world of Memale Kol Almin. Memale Kol Almin, logic works. 1 + 1 = 2 is very much a part of this physical universe and therefore very much makes sense from a Memale Kol Almin perspective. But from this transcendent energy, from this Sovev Kol Almin perspective, 1 + 1 = 2 is as meaningless as 1 + 1 = 3. Both of them have no relevance because you're talking about infinity and nothing has any relevance. No finite thing has any relevance over there. And now he understood why, at least for him, how helpful it was that Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi taught not only about Memale Kol Almin, but its counterpart of Sovev Kol Almin. Because sitting there on the floor in mourning and in despair and in sadness, the only thing that this person that brought him any comfort is the fact that it does not have to make sense. That there's a level and a connection that I have with God, and I can still be connected to God, and it does not have to make sense. I can be connected to God, and I can have questions, and both of those things can coexist. I can feel pain, I can feel hurt, my heart can be torn into two, and I am still close to God. In fact, I'm probably more connected to God because I'm connected to an infinite level, an infinite energy of God. I'm connected to that Sovev Kol Almin. And so if you go to buy material, or you send your husband to buy material, and he comes back with the wrong material, but he has this absolute certainty that it happened for my good, he is connecting not with Memala Kol Almin at that moment. He's connecting with Sovev Kol Almin. And when you connect with Sovev Kol Almin, when you connect with this infinite power of God, then there is really nothing that cannot happen. A miracle can happen, because what is a miracle? A miracle is where nature is set aside. A miracle is where Memala Kol Almin is set aside. A miracle is where we plug into something which is Sovev Kol Almin. So I bless you all that you find your flourish. And what does that mean, to find your flourish? To find your flourish means it doesn't matter what's happening around you. If you plugged in to the energy of Memala Kol Almin, when things are good, and when things become challenging and rocky, you plug into the energy of Sovev Kol Almin, then regardless of what's happening, you too can find your flourish.